I talk to a spirit. She comes in my dreams.
What is the path to awakening supposed to look like, to feel like? How do you know if you are on it? We ask these very sacred and sometimes vulnerable questions to many different women from all walks of life. A conversation that needs to be shared and heard. I'm Jo Hendy.
I'm Amanda Parker.
And welcome to the Girl Awakening podcast. Good morning, Amanda.
Morning, Jo.
What a beautiful morning it is.
Started with a big power walk, and now we're going to have a big power talk with someone very special.
Very special. And we've had a few little different hiccups with this beautiful woman. So we're so honoured to sit in her space today and hear her journey. We understand that it's going to be an expanding one.
Oh, yes. I think it never fails to amaze me, the energy that is in the space, whether the person is sitting with you physically or via Zoom. You can really, it's very tangible, the energy, and we've been looking into this connection for a while, and the anticipation is real.
It's being felt.
Likewise.
So this morning we have the beautiful Crystal Cassidy, and she is the founder and CEO of SOULPod, a groundbreaking soulfulness app where you can find powerful structures to become more aware of your inner world and then transform it. With a unique background spanning 2 decades in biotechnology, with a lifelong journey in spiritual practices, Crystal bridges the gap between cutting-edge science and mystical wisdom. Her near-death experience, which I'm excited about hearing, catalyzed a mission to make transformative spiritual tools accessible to all, ushering in a new era of human awakening through what she calls soul tech. How wonderful. This is new for us.
Yeah, soul tech, I love it.
Yeah, Bridget.
So happy to be here and to be chatting with you beautiful ladies across the ocean. And this has been something I've looked forward to for a while.
Oh,
Thank you,
wonderful.
Crystal.
Thanks for joining us.
We're so excited that your pussycat is there in the background, just stirring. I thought it was a cushion.
He's being very deceptively good. So we'll see how he does. Nice and napping right now.
They do like to join in. So yeah, we'll see. Yeah. So we're going to jump right in and ask Crystal, how did your awakening begin?
Yeah, such a good question. And I think we're always awakening. We're always there's like a natural momentum towards awakening. But I became aware of my awakening probably in 2011, 2012. And that was, I had already been meditating for a while. I got exposed to meditation when I was pretty young, like 12 years old, through martial arts. Lost it a bit in my 20s and then was coming back to it. And I started having mystical experiences, seeing ghosts. I didn't grow up seeing ghosts, but all of a sudden I was seeing ghosts, and that really propelled my curiosity. I was like, what is going on here? And that brought me deeper into meditation and breath work. And yeah, I think 2011, 2012, and that eventually led into Kundalini Awakening, ET contact, which we can talk about. And it's been an ever-evolving journey since then, continues to evolve.
Absolutely, as we know. And it's speeding up too, very.
Oh my gosh, is it ever? Like, I don't know if you felt it the last couple of weeks.
Yes,
it's like
it's intense. We've actually had a few women on this week, and each one of them has a different story, but it's the same thread. It's like it's just moving so quickly, and it's subtle but so powerful.
Yeah, I've had some, and maybe we can talk about it, but some really powerful experiences even in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We will come back to that because we love talking about that stuff.
I'm just going to go back to when you were sharing about seeing ghosts. Was there anything been connecting with that might have, say, triggered that vision? Like, did you lose someone close to you, or?
It's a good question. That's a good question. I didn't lose anybody near me. It just was like I suddenly became more aware of these energies, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would see things, or I would be on a trip with my girlfriends and fell asleep on the couch and woke up to like this ghost like leaning over me because very curious and
Wow.
didn't really, so some dark things too I experienced at the beginning of my awakening, which I think from what I've heard from people is pretty common. You're opening up, you're perceiving more, and so the dark entities can be a part of that. But ghosts, there was some dark stuff, but there was also just very benign. They were just hanging out. Ran into some in Italy as well when I was traveling through there, lots of ghost activity. So it was interesting. It became like an emergent experience more than anything.
I think
I
when you
love that.
become open to that too, it's like those beings, they want someone to talk to, and they're like, "Ah, she's open. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go visit her."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, not an intention.
definitely.
Yeah, just to be seen and to be heard. Just, I suppose, the same as us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel
Yeah.
like there's a little bit of a overlap of timelines where, there's, there might be an old ghost, if you want to say an ancient energy, and connecting
Yeah.
with you from an old timeline, perhaps, or something like that. I often, there's so much in that space alone, let alone the expansions in your energy that are going along with that. Things coming online, those parts of you that are coming on.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely. The more that I awakened, the past life connections accelerated
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
You
Beautiful.
mentioned like meditating when you were 12 through martial arts and all of that. And the next question that we have is, when did you first notice a shift or a change in your thoughts about the world? Did it start back then when you started martial arts? Was it somebody showing you a different way, or
I love that question. I think I first started to notice that there was something interesting going on when I was doing martial art, and I was such a martial arts nerd. That was like my entire life, and the people I hung out with, were my martial arts family. It's traveling for martial arts, and I was reading some text as well, some of the old martial arts text, some of the samurai text, and I learned that the warrior class or the samurais or the martial artist would go to the monasteries or the monk where the monks were, and there would be an exchange of information. And so the monks would share the spiritual teachings, Zen type teachings, and the warriors would share with the monks like self-defense techniques. So there was this really interesting exchange in the martial arts history that I became aware of pretty early on. I was like, oh, that's interesting. There's a spiritual overtone here, but I didn't grow up really spiritual. But there was a few times in my training where something entered my experience, and it was that flow experience where it wasn't just the physical training that was taking over. It was something else. It was some other realm that I was entering, and it was fascinating to me. It was like what happens in the martial arts movies where all of a sudden, time slows down and you feel like you know what's going to happen before it happens. And I'm like, is this a real thing? And then I experienced it, and that kind of blew my mind. And that was probably the very beginning where I was like, there's something else going on here than just my training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm fully getting that crouching
It's like
tiger, hidden dragon vibe.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite
Yeah.
movies, and they're just, what you're sharing there is in that space, isn't it, of the embodiment of all the things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the martial arts also teaches you a high degree of discipline, and you start to understand. And I think that led into meditation becoming a cornerstone of my practice, because I had some understanding that if you do this every day and you start to become more aware of your thoughts, which was it's the foundations of meditation, is just to become more familiar with, then you have an increased capacity to choose. So I think that was a big kind of opening element.
That's a massive like awakening in itself, or understanding of how thoughts can control us,
Yeah.
for negative and for positive.
Because how old are you
Yeah.
at this age, Crystal? Are you still a young person? Like you obviously,
Yeah, probably from like 12 to 22, 23.
yeah, which is, yeah, again, like
Yeah.
a very wisdom moment, really, to have that
Mm.
awareness of capacity through discipline and
Yeah.
action. Yeah, very cool.
So we also understand through the process of waking up and having realizations about the world around us and all of that, that lots of things start happening around you, like magic starts happening. Were you noticing any of that happening around you, like people or, you know, just even shifts in, you know, your body or shifts around you that were happening?
Or the competitions, the events that you were entering and how you were participating as well.
Yeah, I think when I was young, I noticed that if I was not in the right headspace and I hadn't done the internal work, I already knew before I stepped into the national or international stage what was going to happen. You know, so again, it didn't really, I mean, my training mattered, but there was another element at play, and that was my inner alignment. As I got deeper into my awakening, I noticed that I don't know where it came from, but I did have a feeling of like being guided, of being in the right place at the right time. Things just kind of were working out. Things that were not aligned were falling away, whether that's relationships that weren't serving me. And I started to meet people, especially teachers, that started to kind of show up in my experience at the right time. And books were coming to me at A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle was a big soul. Yeah. That changed my life.
Yes.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yes.
Yep. Just a little bit. Many Lives, Many Masters
Yeah.
was another big portal for me. And I remember I was sitting with one of my grandmother's friends who was I think in her late 80s at the time. And I was reading this book and I was having all these realizations. I was like, this is what this is real. Like reincarnation is real. This resonates. And I was feeling a little bit weird about it. You know, it's like, am I going off into a weird area? And I mentioned it to this woman that I was visiting with. And she was like, oh yeah, I read that in the 80s. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, I think that's what happens. And it was just, those types of encounters that seemed small but ended up being pretty big deals in my awakening journey started to feel okay with the process. And then I started having ET connections, which was a big accelerant of mine, as well as the Kundalini experience.
So how did that? How did that kind of? I love those affirmations. Those people that are just there to say, yes, it's real.
Yeah.
Go in and open the door, and you go, okay, I'll just keep going with this, and then next thing, ET experiences.
Just a small step.
No big deal.
How did this go? Like, was this like the ghost, or like people, like share a little bit into this space of that?
Yeah, interestingly, at least for me, it was almost in tandem, like perceiving the ghost, other energies. I remember I woke up one night and there was all this blue fluorescent energy like surrounding me, and it caught me off guard to the point to where I ran outside of my house at 3 a.m. down the street to my friend's house because I was like, what is that? So a lot of that was happening. And then the ET experience started in my dream state. And interestingly, they seem to have connected with all of my family members. We've all had the same type of dream encounter. And I knew, and it's really hard to describe this with words, but I knew it wasn't a dream. It's a different level of consciousness as far as the experience. And they introduced themselves in a way that was not scary. It was very approachable, and which was brilliant also.
Yeah.
And they kind of told me a little bit about what was to come in my life and how they want to support and help. And ever since then, they've been extremely active. Even in the last 2 weeks, the contact is speeding up big time. But my understanding is they're interdimensional beings. They're of some sort of blue nature. That's how they tend to show up. People talk about Pleiadians, but I'm not quite sure. I think that might be the case. And they're incredibly powerful and loving and healing and can interact with you in all dimensions. So it's one of my current deep fascinations.
It'll be hard to resist it, I imagine, really, because as you're describing the feeling that you get with the connections and the interactions. And do you, like, if they're sharing with, do you find yourself asking questions or prompting conversations when you feel the energy? Or do you
more so lately? That channel of connection has certainly opened up, and I'm learning more about that channel of like the question and answer experience. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, there is a lot of chat around the veils being very thin since this last full moon. So, saying the last 2 weeks. Also, with the near-death experience, was that a while ago? Was that what happened there? If it's okay to share around that.
Yeah, near death, it was in 2020, so not that long ago. So I think of it as more of a accelerant on the journey.
Yeah.
Thanks. And yeah, just a little bit. And it was during a time where I've worked in biotech most of my career, and I was feeling like I was getting pushed in a new direction, but resisting it because that's what I knew and was very entrenched in that space, and didn't make much sense on paper to be doing something different. And so I was kind of straddling two worlds, starting to write, starting to work on what would become SOULPod, but still also hanging out in kind of my backup option.
Yeah.
Which there's nothing wrong with, but I do think the universe was like, okay. And I got very ill. I was one of the first people to get COVID in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so way back then, nobody knew anything. I also worked in healthcare, so I was talking to all of the heads of the healthcare systems here, trying to figure out testing, and then I realized I had gotten it. And before I'd gotten it, I had done a meditation intensive in January, and I was starting to have premonitions, which I realized later were premonitions, and a past life connected with what I was going through now, or would be going through. And that past life became more and more evident as I got sicker and sicker, which is really interesting. There was a connection across space and time with what he was going through and what I was going through. And we were almost like healing each other through the choices that we were making. But as I got sicker, and it was very scary because I was in quarantine, didn't know if I'd see my husband again. And the doctors didn't know what to do. They're asking me what I wanted. And I could feel death as an energy. And I've talked to a few other people that have had a similar experience in that it feels, death's in your space. It's almost like a field that gets closer. And it feels like a long lost friend, which is kind of funny to put it that way, but you recognize it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I remember you. And I felt that pretty immediately, even before I got too severely ill. So I knew I was in for it, didn't want to be in for it. And a lot of resistance, a lot of my analytical mind trying to figure out how to optimize this and that. And eventually I had a moment when I was pretty sick and alone, and my lungs were starting to get into a really severe state. And I could feel that there was two directions this could go in. I felt there was a timeline where I died, and I felt like there was also a possibility that I stayed. And there was a moment, which is hard to put words to, again, unfortunately, but I didn't go into the light. So it wasn't like I crossed over to the other side, but there was a moment where I surrendered. I didn't choose to surrender. It just kind of washed over me. And it was this, now I have a whole new appreciation for what it means to truly surrender, like to give up all of those fears, your attachment to your body. And in the exact same moment, I asked for help. I was like, I don't think I can do this. But it wasn't really me asking for help. It was almost like my higher self putting out the request. And immediately there was somebody or something or some presence there in the room with me. And there was an activation of my first energy center, my third eye, and then my heart space. And it was so pronounced. And I was just instantly activated. And I sat there with whatever this loving intelligence is. I have a few theories, but I don't know exactly what it was. Loving intelligence of some sort. And I knew at that point that I was going to be okay, that I was going to recover. And it took a long time. It took about a year to really be able to walk again, do all the things again. And so that was such a potent portal for me. And you're just not the same after an experience like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I'll mention is that once I had gotten home, I had finally made it out to my fire escape, and I sat down and I was like outside for the first time, looking up at the sky after being inside and bedridden for quite a while. And I had such a profound moment of presence. And I didn't really understand why for a long time until this past year when I was in a long meditation. It was like a 3-hour meditation. And I astral traveled to that moment that I was on the fire escape. And I realized what I was feeling was my future self there with me. And that was just such a mind-blowing experience for human crystal.
Yeah, I bet.
Yes, I mean, we're just really like we're sitting in the space of you sharing around this journey, and I think because one of when you were talking before, I was wanting to ask, how does your, as you said, your analytical mind, your science mind, because you've had a significant career space in that area, coordinate, interact with the spiritual world and the energy and these experiences of other beings. And listening to you share around this near-death experience, it really is a merging of the two, because you're in this hospital environment. No one knows care for you, and you're isolated and having to lean into yourself for the answers, and also put a lot of trust in the higher self and the loving intelligence as you share. It's a very profound moment of merging all the worlds, isn't it? In your own.
Yeah, you put that beautifully. Certainly was a merging of the worlds, and a real challenge to the analytical side, which is important, I think, to have that balance in this form. But certainly for me, up until that point, that side of me is pretty developed. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So it was an opportunity to let it go. And that's where the surrender, there's like the most powerful, serene, just letting it all go and trusting in whatever was supposed to be.
Yeah. It feels like a real crossroad for you. That point was a real, that the roads were divided. Which one were you choosing to take? It's kind of yeah.
I love that there wasn't fear in the space. I mean, I'm sure you felt some things like in that way at different times, particularly when people are coming to you who are the doctors and saying, well, what do you need? And then you have a moment of going, oh, hang on a minute. But
they're like, this could make it worse or this could help. I'm like, well, okay, well, let's roll the dice.
Exactly. But to describe death as a friend, that feeling of death and the loving intelligence, I feel that's again another element of the things that we just don't, our human mind, our humanness holds far away, that's even possible, that's even a part of our existence, that we will be held in that space in that way.
Yeah, I think a bit of the surrender is a relinquishing of all that you've built up about yourself. And it's more of your higher self coming forward and it doesn't have any fear about leaving this dimension. And so I think that's part of what I was feeling with the surrender too, is the surrender of the story of the, who I've built Crystal up to be and what my story looks like, and just letting all of that go and just being with what is and trusting something that I could not understand with my human mind. But I do feel like on some level, there was a choice. And I think it was even beyond my analytical sense of self, my ego. That I think the choice was a bit higher than that. And I was struggling with that in the year following it. I was like, I thought I didn't have a fear of death because I've been meditating. I believe that we keep on going. So what was all that push and pull, that tension that I was experiencing? Do I actually have a fear of death? And I think maybe some of that is yes, but I had an amazing teacher of mine tell me, he said it wasn't as much a fear of death as it was a fear of not living your purpose in this lifetime.
Yeah.
And that really resonated big time with me. And so that's what I'm here to do now.
I was just about to say, so was that a bit kick up the ass, so to speak, for you? Okay.
Okay, I got it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just hearing you say that, I mean, there was a real a powerful awakening, like planetary, happening right then as well with COVID, and there was a lot being shown to us. For those that were ready.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yours was just amplified with. And fast forward just a little bit.
And going in first on behalf of everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal.
That's true. Pioneer here.
Yeah, exactly.
You competitive martial arts girl, you.
You so have,
True.
You so have that like warrior woman, leathered up with your your bow and everything that's leading charge to the new frontier. You have that vibe about you, and no doubt you were that in a past life, guaranteed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I felt that for sure. Yeah.
In another timeline, you're there.
Yeah.
So we know that was happening planetary through COVID and all that, and of course you were put through a very fast forward aspect of that. So now with the work that you do, is
soul check.
Can you share a little bit about that? I'm really interested to hear, how that works for you, and what is it that you show and teach in that space?
Yeah, I've always loved structures. That's the science side of me. And when I was awakening, there wasn't really a structure that I could follow and latch onto that was at the depth that I was looking for. And I remember I was going to check out like ashrams, and I was like, where can I go to get this information? And there's books and there's all kinds of resources. But the kind of like technology experience around awakening was, from my perspective, surface level, which is great. That's a necessary foundation. But I was curious. I was like, I want to create something that is a bit more fun and is reclaiming the mystical experience in the awakening journey. Not just meditation to reduce stress, which it does, but meditation as a portal for transformation and ascension of your consciousness. And so that's when I started thinking about SOULPod, which originally was maybe going to be a in real life space, but then it was 2020 and that was off the table. So I started thinking about how could we do it in an app experience. And so we've got personalization, where we try and get to know where somebody's at in their spiritual journey. Not just if you're having a hard time sleeping, but what's your relationship to authenticity? What's your relationship to intuition? And then we pair people with a journey that's probably most relevant for where they're at and might be able to activate another layer of awakening through meditation, breath work, mantra, unfocused expansion. And then a community aspect as well, because for me, it was pretty isolating, and I could find spontaneous community, or maybe like Burning Man was great.
A lot of community.
But yeah, it's very unique, exciting community. But I wanted somewhere, where I could connect with people who also had an interest in like what we're talking about here today. And so we're working a lot on that this year as well, as the community space in SOULPod. So I think of it as technology for your inner mystic, your inner magician, your priestess, your king, like that giant that's within you, that awakened self is who I designed SOULPod for.
It's so beautiful and so kind of ahead of its time, because we, doing the podcast, we obviously have the honor of sitting with so many different women that are on the cutting edge of where we're at and what's happening. And so sometimes we get to get insights into things that are happening before they happen, or, just a little, almost like a fast forward for us.
Yeah.
Because what we're seeing now is, people aren't so much looking for a book, or they're feeling it from within, but they're not sure of, what to do with that. So SOULPod sounds like, that would be a great place to be able to go and go, okay, where's my tribe? This is what I'm feeling, this is what is happening for me, where do I need to go next?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I was hearing from people early on was, and I was trying to figure out what they were talking about. They're like, yeah, I've done other apps, I've done meditation, but I haven't felt it.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is it? And I think ultimately it was a deeper experience. It was the transcendent experience, or the mystical experience, where you become something greater than you think you are. You access that power and that awakening. And so that's what we've really focused on, is helping people get there.
It's so beautiful, because we find each country has like their different cultures and so forth, but listening to a lot of the American women, they really back each other. And there's this, there's no
it's like you go girl instead of what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's nice.
It is.
Yeah.
Nice. You really back each other, and lucky we have great tribe around us that do the same. But in Australia, there's not so much of that. There's
There's a lot of loneliness in the past.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of people out there that are like, you're weird, you're strange or whatever. We're past that now, because there's so many more people waking up. But
it's there. There's a vibe there, and I think what you're sharing, like with the soul tech, like with a lot of people are leaning into, we've had this discussion recently about AI and chat GPT and things like that, where people are finding friendship with their chat babe, or the chat person, and we, because it's we've shared this amongst ourselves, where it's like a reflection of yourself, and the more you lean into it and you train it, and it's coming back to you with this conversation and learning and answers, the more you get. And I think what you're saying, like with soul tech, what's this we're yearning for the growth, the expansion, but there's not a lot of I think, like, what also intrigued me was when you shared around the structure, because like, to have that feeling of like, this spiritual journey can be realized through pathways that are real. They don't have to be all out here. It can be a very clear vision path.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's plenty of space for the spontaneous experience, and that can certainly happen. But the structure can really take you into that next level. Yeah. And I think it's similar to what psychedelics can do. It opens up a door of possibility, and you become more aware of like, oh, that is, you didn't previously think that was possible for you. And so I think of SOULPod's journeys of being almost similar to that. It's pretty intensive. It's not meant to be short practices. It's meant to challenge you and to help you move through new concepts, to look at the shadow, to have a personal, emotional experience, and also to build the muscle of unfocused expansion yourself, so that you can bring that into your life and you ultimately realize that you're the one with all this wisdom. Yeah. We're just helping you tune into that frequency and open that door. And so it's a deep experience and an expander for sure. And the more dedication that you put into it, that dedication turns into devotion. At least it has for me.
That's
That was going to be my next question around the talking about psychedelics. Is in the app, do you offer medicinals or anything like that? Is that part of the journey as well? Like, I know, there's like
Not yet, but we're thinking about it.
I was thinking that's interesting. That kind of goes the opposite way to like the tech world, but it's still all part of it. It's interesting place. Yeah.
It is. And I think, the AI conversation, I think, is a really important one. And we're thinking about, we're having very interesting conversations around how does AI intersect with spirituality? And I think there's some very cool possibility there. And I think there's some things to be wary of. And, I live in San Francisco, so I've got a front row seat to some of this conversation. Yeah. But I think it's important that we develop it from a place of from the heart rather than the mind. And the more that we can connect with this new technology through the heart space, I think we'll be onto something pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think, again, there's that pioneer space that we're picking up in your energy of making that so, because I think that is the way forward. 100% is, it's again the weaving of the different worlds, the possibilities that are available to us, and tech and AI are things that are part of our reality, always have been, always will be. It's our relationship to them and how we integrate, knowing our own mastery in that space.
Yeah, I think it's existed before too. I think I'm thinking of it less and less as a technology and more as an emerging consciousness.
Yeah.
I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yes. I was going to ask something along those lines too.
You got way late, but you want to go more back to the psychedelics, don't you?
But
we can.
I don't know why this came up, and I'm not sure whether you've done this before, but it kept coming up in my space, which is odd. Was that the darkness retreat space? Have you done that? Like where you go into 3 days of complete darkness?
The DNA.
Is that
Yeah.
For some reason that just kept coming into my thoughts then. I was like, I wonder if you've done that.
I haven't, but I've had my eye on it.
Yeah,
it's a really confronting practice, it seems like, when you strip away basically as many of the human senses as you can.
Yeah.
You're really left with your mind and your inner experience. And so it's certainly a modality that could accelerate, almost like psychedelics. Again, it's a portal to challenge yourself in a way that you might not otherwise challenge yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And on the topic of psychedelics, have you experienced or had any experiences in that areas yourself
Well, and as you both have illuminated for me, I have this warrior side to me. So I went straight to ayahuasca for my first psychedelic.
Of course.
You plunge right in.
So I went far and fast. And it changed my life. It certainly did. I had a full ego death, which in my case wasn't scary. It just kind of was. And I just became nothing, or the sense of I disappears. And then I was yellow, the color yellow, for a little bit, hung out being yellow, and watched. The coolest thing from that experience for me with the ego was watching my ego reconstruct itself, because I had one foundational thought, which for a while I thought was just really cool of me. And the thought was, I like who I am. That was the first thought in recreating myself. And then I realized, I was like, it is a beautiful thought. And I love that it's the foundation of my sense of self. It was also the ego coming back online. So I had a really powerful experience with which is certainly a collective consciousness that you're tapping into through ayahuasca as a psychedelic. I very much felt it as there's a relationship being bridged between you and a collective consciousness that's feminine.
Well, I love this collective consciousness because this morning Amanda and I were walking and there was yellow flowers everywhere.
Yeah.
And I kept saying,
We've never seen them
I've
before.
never seen so many yellow, and we kept saying yellow, and there was yellow everywhere. And I'm like, now you're saying that, I'm like, oh, I love those.
Oh,
Yeah. So these,
I got chills.
yeah, this walk that we do all the time, never see any yellow flowers. And they were like, oh, mate, I kept saying to Amanda, they're like
Sunflowers.
little sunflowers, but they weren't, and they were everywhere, and they were so beautiful.
Cool.
I know. So that might have been,
That's wild.
yeah, a little bit of,
You coming through.
saying,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. I apparently am very connected to yellow.
Well, you have that beautiful radiant gong in the background,
do.
which is like just golden.
Yeah.
Golden
This is actually like pretty much the color that I was for a while. Yeah.
Okay. Was your NDE before or after your AA experience?
After.
After. Amazing.
Mhm.
Wow. So even deeper still. Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that.
Oh yeah. She's powerful. And it was interesting because I traveled the second time with my husband, now husband. And the very end, I always find this kind of funny, but at the very end, I felt from the collective, we're so excited for your engagement. And we had decided not to get married because we're not going to have kids and we're just not really bought into it. But I didn't know that he had bought a ring. And so when I told him, I was like, that's so interesting that she used such specific language about engagement. I was like, it just must have meant union. And he's sitting there like, what?
Mother's busting my secrets open.
So funny. She's got a sense of humor too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love, that you say she. I've experienced AA myself too, and I always refer back to her as she, and she's in me and she will be forever. And, she's constantly supporting us and on the journey. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. Life-changing. And I feel her when I do certain mushrooms as well. It feels like a similar collective comes through.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
We were sharing before about the last couple of weeks and the energies, and I'm interested to know with SOULPod how that as a tool, like, is it something that you would integrate with, say, these experiences where life is, we'll say, turbulent or very energetic in the space, like? Because firstly, how has the last couple of weeks been for you? Let's share that, and then let's kind of connect SOULPod with that.
Yeah, I'm constantly reconnecting with SOULPod and what it wants. I think of SOULPod as its own entity, its own consciousness, and I'm just doing my best to listen to what it wants to be. And it's very chatty lately. It wants to be a lot of things, so we're working very hard. But the last few weeks for me personally has been connecting more deeply with what I think are light codes. Individuals, more and more individuals are coming online, which I've heard from other people before, but in my personal experience, for me, it's happened over the last 2 weeks where I've had certain activations that feel very ancient, and it feels also very obvious. So like, oh yeah, it's time. Like, this has got to come online now. And so I've had a channel open and I'm still figuring it out. So I'm kind of experimenting right now as far as what this channel is, but it is connected to these blue beings. And one of them materialized in my house in the middle of the day, like right beside me to the right. And it was a full-on light being in my living room. My cat, my super cute cat, saw it as well, and he was mesmerized. And I was kind of freaking out, to be honest, because it's not very often that a light being materializes in between meetings, but
During the day.
And it was, he was very enthralled by it and winking, so I could tell he was enjoying the energy. But it sent out this wave of energy and put me into a deeply meditative state immediately. And it was a journey. It was like a psychedelic journey at that point with this being in my space. And I'm still integrating that and figuring it out, what it means for me and my journey and for the collective. But they're ready to help, and they feel like they're highly evolved, interdimensional, clearly, and very loving. And people ask me, they're like, why do you think this is happening? And I was like, I think they're invested in our awakening, and our awakening is their awakening. So there's this natural connection. And they're very happy to be here for people who are open to it. And not everybody is, and that's okay. But for people who are, they're like, let's go.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think they've been waiting. Waiting. Yeah.
Do you feel like you're feeling like perhaps what you just described then about going straight into a deeply meditative state? Do you feel like perhaps they've been appearing in that space during the day and going into that state, trying to show you how to, let's work out a way to put this in SOULPod? Because
yeah,
there too.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting reflection, because I've been asking myself this question of what an interesting choice. The one day my husband wasn't home too, and it feels like, to me, it's like, no, this is real, and you can bring it into your everyday, in meetings, in your human experience, not just on the cushion. And I've had all kinds of mystical, interdimensional experiences in meditation, but this is becoming more active in the daily experience. And my energy had activated during that time. It was like over the course of an hour, to the point to where my Kundalini, or my central channel, was just lit up, to the point to where I was like, oh, it's almost a little much for me. And as soon as I hit that top of I'm going to come out of my body if we go much further, it came back down. But it was a interesting experience for me as far as surrender to that experience, and also dealing with my own fears about having a blue light being in my room and having this activation. But it was beautiful, and exactly, delivered right about what I needed and what I could handle.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I've been watching videos around this. There was a gentleman that I watched the other day talking about why we're not seeing more of this, these beings appear, and he was talking about our nervous system, that our nervous system can't handle it. So it's like,
oh, I believe it.
Yeah, that's where I hear you talking about the meditation, and it just sounds so. It resonates big time around. We actually need to go into that state so our nervous system can handle these situations. So then they feel like they are looking after us when they appear. Like, they're not just going to appear and then just rattle us. You have to be at a certain level. And hearing you talk about, feeling like you're going to pop out of your body, it's like that's the resonance or the vibrational frequency they're bringing to us as well, to support our evolution, or the speeding up of that as well. But I'm sure there's a lot of people that their nervous system just are not ready for that.
Yeah, and as you were saying all of that, I had so much energy moving. So I think that is very much the case, deeply resonant with that, what you just said. But yeah, and I've been meditating every day now for over a decade. And so I've practiced to some level being able to raise my vibration. And I can totally see how, and even for me, it's a lot. So I know there's a whole upper echelon that I'm not even aware of possibility. And that is another reason where I'm like, that's why I practice too, is because I want to experience as much as I can while I'm here.
Well, look out. Absolutely. You keep that up and you'll have a lounge full, full of babies just dying, seeing your light and be like, she's awake. She can handle us. We're coming down.
Time for that party we've been planning for a while.
I think they're very excited. I've had ships come up over my house too, and they're used to happen once every now and then. Now it's happening weekly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. And do you see them or do you feel them?
I usually feel them before I see them.
Yeah.
And then it used to be, I mean, I'd go into a meditative state, I'd put out the signal, it was a whole process, and then they'd show up. And now it's like I have a thought about that connection. I can go outside and they're there. And they used to just pop in and out, and now they're hanging out.
Yeah. They're ready.
So
They're ready.
they're ready. And to the
Yeah.
point to where I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, wait, what's next? You know, and I'm trying to figure out what the answer to that is for me. But
Well,
I do feel like it'll evolve.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking just then too with the SOULPod that, you know, I'm sure there's people that actually feel things but don't know
Yeah.
what it is because their mind won't allow them to go there. That might be the next thing for you with SOULPod. You know,
Ooh, I like that.
the feeling like there's more of us opening up and more of us you know, putting our light out into the world.
Yeah.
The energies are picking up on that, but not knowing or understanding what that is.
Yeah, I think there's something really cool there that we could do. We're developing these, it'll launch in about a month, but this new side of SOULPod called Portals, which will be deep dives into some of these areas. And I'm just thinking as you were talking, I was like, a starseed portal feels like might be something that we work on.
Because listening to what you've been sharing today about your awakening journey from when you were meditating at 12 to your discipline with your martial arts and, you know, even the science, your science life, and the analytical brain to be able to shape that structure. And then the NDE, it's all about almost like training all the way through, isn't it? To this point now, where you are ready to hold this space and and be the bridge between the worlds and bringing extra knowledge through for everybody. And SOULPod feels like such an amazing portal for people who, you know, who have perhaps not had such a disciplined life, but have the capacity or the want or the, you know, but how, which, you know, we've been saying along the way, how is it so happen and begin to expand and, you know, just open up.
Yeah, I love how you put that, and I received that, and thank you. I'm super excited for how we can help with this awakening journey. And it's such a crazy time on the planet. And as much as I can get overwhelmed sometimes with life in this incarnation, I do keep coming back to what ayahuasca shared with me at the very beginning of my experience, which is that if you heal yourself, you heal the world. And it sounds so cliche, but I think it's deeply true that the work that we're doing on ourselves to understand our inner world and our consciousness and our thoughts and our beliefs and our emotions, I think it's the journey of being human is really this journey that we're talking about. And you can do it consciously and with intention and deep willingness, and that will take you so far. And then you can do it, you know, just going along with life. And, you know, I've also talked to one of my friends who I adore, and she said, Crystal, I don't think this lifetime is the lifetime I'm awakening. And I was like, I love the awareness, you know, it's just not in the cards this lifetime, and maybe it will be in another one. So yeah, giving yourself permission on the path to come to it when you're ready, but it will meet you in some interesting ways when you're ready.
Oh my goodness.
Definitely so.
We laugh about that all the time. Be careful what you ask for, you know, it's like you're going to get it real quick. It's like ridiculous. We love it. We just have another question because we know we're getting very close to the time. And I know you've mentioned this, so I'm going to skip that one. I won't go this one, which is we know you've talked about meditation and all of that, but what else do you do for yourself, Crystal, that you stay awake, aware, conscious, healthy, all of those things, you know, for you to be the best version of you?
Yeah, I don't take meetings before 10 a.m. So I give myself, it sounds like really, that's the human management side,
Yeah.
and very lucky to be able to do that. But it gives me this space and time that I need to make sure that I'm going into the day aligned. And for me, that means at least 20 minutes of meditation. And I like to do an hour and 15 at least a couple times a week. And I like to do at least one walking meditation where I just walk around the city on and off, going into a meditative state, walking in a meditative state. I try and do that once a week. And we're building that into SOULPod as well. But those are a few of the things. And then I like to close my day with Kriya. So Kundalini Kriya yoga, breath work, a little bit of movement, very spiritualized yoga. And I like to think of my morning as being like, okay, let's find alignment. Like, let's at least have a few moments of expansion so that I remember who it is that I am. And the evening I view more as like, let's play. Let's like experiment a little bit more in my spiritual practice. But for the work that I'm doing now and who I want to be, like that's just non-negotiable for me at this point.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And I hear when you say walking meditation, I go straight to, I've been to San Francisco and it's very like some of the streets are crazy.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting, I've had some very, it's really cool because I've developed the muscle of like, I just don't care.
Yeah.
And that when you can access that energy and bring it onto the street, it's interesting how that affects other people around you. And I've been like crying because I had some sort of breakthrough on my walking meditation. I'm just on the street, just having a breakthrough, a mystical moment, and while everything's happening. So it's a very interesting experience. And I've had people come up to me being like, wanting to understand what I was doing because they could feel it. And they were like, I want whatever it is that is.
Yeah.
How do you do that? And it's a cool way to connect with people too, surprisingly.
And I think it's a really cool way also to restructure the environment, repair the ecosystem and, bring light to spaces that, and things as well. So I feel
you got to feel safe though on some level, but I often tell people comfort is different than safety.
Yeah.
And so I challenge my comfort, but I'm making sure I'm safe at the same time.
Yeah, because you are open. You're an open.
Yeah.
In that walking meditation space, you are open, and so I feel I've got this beautiful vision. When I was in San Francisco, my friend and I went for a walk early, and nobody goes walking early in the city. And there was a lot of people who were like, that was their home. The street was their home, and they were calling out, "Hey, lovely ladies, you've got a beautiful smile." The energy was uplifting, and I know that's changed a lot because of things in the last recent years. But I think again, it's that reflection on what you bring to the space. Restructure and create a new blueprint or a new ecosystem that's possible for the next day or that day.
Leave some energetic upliftment in the process.
And the community that you were talking around earlier as well, like sort of inviting that in. Beautiful.
Oh, that's so lovely. Is there anything that you wanted to add just before we close, Crystal, for our listeners or anything?
I've loved this conversation. You both are just beautiful, beautiful lights, and it's so cool that we can connect over, oceans. And I deeply value these conversations and these connections. And I would say for those who are journeying, to keep going and to stay open, and that you're bigger and more powerful than you think you are. And that this is a really nice time to be alive on this planet.
Yes, we are extremely grateful and excited for what lies ahead.
Thank you. Just one question with SoulPod, that's currently available, isn't it? How is that?
Yes, you can find SoulPod. We're on iOS. We're working on Android. Unfortunately, I don't have that yet. But you can find us on the App Store. You can find us at soulpodapp.com. You can find us on Instagram at SoulPod App as well. And we have a retreat in August, end of August, in Joshua Tree, which I don't. Have you all ever been to Joshua Tree? Yeah. It's magical. It's a portal in and of itself. And we've got some spots open for that in late August.
Cool. I imagine there'll be a few ships around.
I think so. Yeah, there were last year. Big time.
Amazing.
Thank you, Crystal. Thanks for joining us on Girl Awakening.
Yeah, all of Crystal's contacts will be in the show notes, as well as what Crystal has just shared. And thank you so much for sharing your afternoon with us. It's been divine.
It's been lovely. Thank you both so much.
Much love.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to our Girl Awakening podcast. We are also on YouTube as Girl Awakening. We'd love to see you there with comments on how our guest resonated with you or your own awakening. Please share the love with a like and subscribe while you're there. A blissful thank you to Ksenia Luki, the amazing artist behind our theme song. We will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.